We have over 300 people participating. So we are going to not do breakout rooms and some of those type of things. We are going to ask you to chat in the chat box from time to time. We do have a poll. We ask you to do some reflection. So if you can have a piece of paper ready and take any notes that you might have or questions that you might want us to answer so that you won't forget them, and then be able to put them in the chat box towards the end or during what you feel is an appropriate time, that would be great. Because we do want to capture all of your voice and your opinions and your perspectives on things. We have a lot of resources that we will be presenting. The resources are available in a curated list and or the Humanware website. That is also will be on, will also be on the last few slides. So, and this presentation will also be available. We'll send the presentation to the PD office, and it will be added to the handouts. So, yes, you will have access to the resources and the different resources that will be available. They are available on the Humanware website, and this presentation will be available to you.
Okay, Dr. Goggins, I think we're ready to get started. And if you want to put in, some participants are asking for the number for this session.
Okay, yes, we'll have the numbers. There's the slide at the end. We'll have the numbers and everything on the session. But just, where is it? We have, the code is SEL778. SEL778. And we will have that also on the last slide of the presentation.
All right, good afternoon, educators. Welcome to your professional learning session on embedding social emotional learning strategies in the virtual space. I am Ann Premer, one of your co-facilitators for today's session. I am not officially with the Humanware department, but I will be supporting them in the future with the implementation of restorative practices across the district. And as some of you may know, we've taken a pause on rolling out restorative practices at the school level, and we will return to that in the 21-22 school year. I am a former math and middle school ELA teacher and a pre-K through 8 principal. My why for the work I do is that I really believe one of the keys to closing our equity and achievement gap is really providing not just our students, but just as importantly, our educators and our school-based staff with a school environment where they feel respected, where they feel heard, and where they feel they can bring their whole selves to their teaching and learning. Simply put, our kids and adults, we all need to know that someone cares about us and believes in our potential. We won't, and kids won't engage or try with us otherwise. So I am joined by Dr. Goggins. Dr. Goggins, do you want to introduce yourself before we dive into the presentation?
Hello, I'm Lathartis Goggins II. I am, I'm going to be your tech wing person, as the case may be. So I will be spending a lot of time trying to do the chat and admitting people in. But welcome to our presentation. We look forward to participating with you and discussing with you. I am the Humanware partner for high school. So if you, all my high school folks, If you have any questions, concerns, or want to connect, I'm your guy. And we'll have, and again, on the website, there are a list of all the Humanware connections. But if you are K-8, your Humanware partners would be Joe Garrix, Dr. Joe Garrix, or Patricia Tillo. Okay, let me see if I can get everything. I'm gonna get these last few folks admitted, and we'll get the PowerPoint going. There we go.
All right, great. So again, welcome. We are going to provide you a plethora of strategies that you can implement right away when you are with your students virtually in September on how to build community virtually and how to create a safe and supportive environment in the virtual space. So our goals for our session today, I'll just give you a moment to read them off the PowerPoint. Okay, and now Dr. Goggins is going to reintroduce to all of us the 5 core competencies and how our work aligns to these competencies.
All right. So when we talk about SEL, social emotional learning, here in Cleveland, we use the CASEL social emotional framework, and that framework is centered around 5 core competencies. So self-management, self-awareness, responsible decision-making, relationship skills, and social awareness. So when we talk about SEL, we're talking about how do we use, incorporate, uplift these 5 competencies into our practice. How is it that we engage students around these? How do we teach? How do we use these core competencies as a focal point for our practice and our work? So we're going to do a poll, and we want to know, how comfortable are you integrating, embedding the SEL core competencies into your practice? I'm going to launch a poll, so we're going to ask everybody to respond. Okay. About 80% response. Just a few more seconds. Okay. So we got to. All right, we're in the poll. Share the results. There you go. So just about equal amounts in the somewhat to comfortable range. A good portion of you, about almost a little more than a fifth of you are very comfortable. Excellent, excellent. And then some not comfortable, at all. So hopefully by the end of this, we have a lot of resources that we will go through. And what I'll say is that as Humanware partners, particularly, we are well versed, we are experts, but we are not all knowing. So we like to think of ourselves as thought partners, people that you can contact, and we will sit down and process and pull out the resources that we know and make it fit, make it work, make it something that you can work with. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing the results. Okay, and move on. Anne.
Okay, thanks, Dr. Goggins. Okay, so we are going to practice one of the ways that you can start or end your day in the virtual space with your students. And right now I am going to paste into the chat box a resource from Facing History and Ourselves. And the mood meter comes from this resource page. And on this resource page, you will see a plethora of opening and closing routines that you can do with your students. So you may not be able to read it on Dr. Goggins' screen, and that's okay. I've shared the resource with you. And again, these resources will be available to you later. But as you can see, there's plenty of quick opening routines you can do. It explains why you would start with this routine and kind of the framework for the routine. So again, I shared this with you in the chat box, and again, it'll be part of the resources for you to use. So going back to the mood meter, excuse me. Okay, so Mark Brackett created this mood meter. He wrote Permission to Feel. I believe he's out of Yale University. And with his mood meter, he not only created this chart, but also identified a process that we can use with our students and with ourselves to identify our feelings, figure out what's causing them, and what we can do to mitigate them. So to read this chart, if we start in the bottom, the blue section, so you may not be able to read it on the PowerPoint, and that's okay. But in the blue section, we have the bottom left, feeling of despair. And when we are feeling despair, we are at our lowest energy levels and our most unpleasant feeling. When we move up on the y-axis into the red zone, that's when our energy levels increase, but our pleasantness levels don't necessarily increase. So if you can see in the top left corner is rage, not rage, enraged, feeling enraged. And so when we're feeling enraged, our energy level is at its highest, but we're still feeling very unpleasant. When we get into the yellow zone, that's when our energies are also quite high, but our pleasantness levels have also increased. So this is where we feel ecstatic and cheerful and giddy. Then in the green zone, our energy levels have decreased a bit, but we're still feeling pretty pleasant. So this is when we're calm, we're serene, and we're feeling pretty good, but not about to run a marathon, okay? So just take a moment right now in the chat box and identify the mood that you are feeling right now. And if you can't identify the specific feeling from the chart, just put in the zone, what zone you think you are in right now.
Mm-hmm. Wow, okay.
Lots of greens, that's great. Everyone's feeling chill. This is the most chill group we've had, Dr. Guy.
Yes. Well, we got a couple of reds in there, but that's all right. But that's high energy and just a matter of getting it focused.
So now as you're thinking about where you're feeling in the mood meter, just take a moment to reflect on what made you feel this way. Okay. So now I'm going to briefly explain what prompts you can use with your students if you'd like to use this mood meter to start your day or even end your day virtually with your students. So the first prompt is around labeling the feelings. And so we ask our students, what word best describes how you are feeling and what caused you to feel this way? Just what we did just now. Then we move into teaching our kids how to express this feeling appropriately. So we pose the question to them, how are you showing your feelings to the world? And is the way you are expressing your feelings helpful to the situation you are in? I'm going to repeat that one. How are you showing your feelings to the world? And is the way you are expressing your feelings helpful to the situation you are in? And notice with that prompt, we're not negating the feeling, and we're not saying you should not be feeling that emotion, but we are wanting to either increase or mitigate the actions that follow the feeling. Then we go into regulating. And so the children, they've identified their feeling, why they're feeling it, and if their behavior tied to that feeling is helping them or hurting them. Then we ask them, what strategy will you use to feel more of, less of, or the same of what you are feeling right now?
Yeah, so a couple of responses of asking, how to do this online. And we have a couple of responses in here that's good, but essentially you can show the mood meter, and particularly for the younger folks, you may not get into all the specifics of the individual feelings, but just the zones. The red being a high energy and some frustration. Yellow is high energy but feeling good. Green is low energy but you feel good. Blue is low energy and you're not feeling so good. Those kinds of things, and just letting them pick and get a sense of what they're doing, or get a sense of the temperature in the room, if you will, or temperature online, but getting them an opportunity to identify and connect to a feeling helps you, the teacher, kind of judge where students are and what you might need to address so that they can get into the learning, or just get a sense of opportunity to identifying where they're emotionally are. That helps them then to regulate that emotion and what needs to happen next.
And Courtney, great. Oh, sorry, Dr. Goggins.
No,
Courtney had a great idea in the post for the little ones who may not be able to identify their colors. You could use different types of faces for each of the zones.
Sure.
Yep, that's a great idea, Courtney. Thanks for sharing.
And you have, if you're with the little ones, you would have your paths, feeling faces that you could use as well with that. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Sure.
Okay, so before we get into more of the meat, we really wanted to take a moment to talk about the why. So why SEL, why now? Many of you perhaps are feeling like the two individuals in the image on the screen. I know I certainly am sometimes for the past few months. Why do we need to prioritize our students' SEL when we have so many other competing priorities? Perhaps you're saying to yourself, I have so much academic catch-up work to do with my students. I cannot possibly focus on this right now. Or I'm more concerned with lesson planning and figuring out the new technology platforms. That is the priority for me right now. Or hopefully, not many of you are feeling this way, but like asking yourself, I don't even know what I'm teaching next year. I don't even know who my students are. That's where my worry and my priority is. And I understand that. It is hard to focus on yet another thing and prioritize yet another tool for September. So why do we need to prioritize SEL? So two big reasons. One, as we are going to dive into in a moment, brain research really tells us that adversity and stress, sorry, I just had a tech glitch. Sorry, okay. So the research shows us that adversity and stress suffered by our students, as well as our adults, really changes the makeup of our brain. And it really impedes our ability to engage with others and to really learn. But the research also shows that a positive classroom environment, virtual classroom environment, and a strong, safe relationships with our students can really buffer this, which we as educators can create through implementing some SEL strategies. Two, the research also tells us that engaging our students in learning is really an educator's most critical task, especially in the virtual space. And we know teachers' classrooms practices are not the only thing that influences student engagement. Just as important is the structure of the school, school leadership, family resources, etc. But today we're really focused on what you as educators can do to increase student engagement virtually by implementing some SEL strategies we discuss. So I keep saying research says. So just so you know that I'm not just pulling this out of thin air, I did want to put some research in front of you. This is from the University of Chicago and the Urban Education Institute. And it's called Supporting Social, Emotional, and Academic Development. And chapter 1 states, educating students in learning is an educator's most critical task. And I'm just going to read one sentence from this research. It says, curriculum, standards, and tests don't matter if students are not participating in class and investing themselves in the learning opportunities that teachers prepare. Now, I also will say that what is just as important to our students' mental health is our teachers' mental health and well-being. And I wish we had 2 more hours to talk about that with you, but unfortunately we don't. But I just want to say that it's just as important as our students' well-being. Okay, so this is the part where I ask that you do not fall asleep. We are going to get into some brain research. Don't worry, I'm not going to spend more than a few minutes on this, but it's really some cool stuff. And I know during your trauma training, you're going to dive more into this, but I'm just going to give you a quick peek into how our brain learns. So we have here the limbic system, and it's made up of 3 structures that must work together seamlessly for effective learning to occur. So we have the prefrontal cortex, and this helps us regulate our thoughts, our emotions, and our behavior. And it's critical for carrying out our executive functions, which include working memory, cognitive flexibility, inhibitory control, complex problem solving, the ability to plan for our future. Then we have the amygdala, and the amygdala reacts to stress and emotional arousal. So this means that the amygdala facilitates our emotional reactions, including our responses to stress, fear, and danger, by cueing the body's fight, flight, or freeze response. Then we have the hippocampus, and this is one of the many parts of the brain, but it's the most important part that is responsible for housing our learning and our memory. So when our brain is under stress and duress and trauma, we can go on to the next slide, Dr. Goggins.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
Still letting folks in.
All right, so the impact of stress and toxic stress and trauma on our brain looks like this. So the amygdala becomes hyperactive, with some research even indicating that the amygdala actually increases in size and changes in size to a size that's too large. So this hyperactivity can mean that a child and adults are in a constant state of high alert, becoming extremely sensitive to potential triggers. Connections, this is really key. So the connections with the prefrontal cortex deteriorate under these conditions of toxic stress and trauma. So this makes it difficult for the prefrontal cortex to regulate our emotions and regulate the amygdala. So when this happens, there's a deficit in our executive functions. So this leads to impulsivity, poor performance monitoring, reduced ability to regulate ourselves, impaired planning, our inability to reason. It even impacts our ability to take in feedback and change our behavior as a result of that feedback. And then finally, it really reduces our working memory. So again, under stress and trauma, the limbic system, they're not communicating with each other, which brings about a breakdown in learning. So if students feel this breakdown, then there is inevitably reduced engagement. And oftentimes when students experience direct or indirect trauma and stress, only their amygdala is activated. But again, the research shows us that positive environments and relationships can buffer the stress in our students and adults and catalyze learning and development. So this is why it is so essential for us to try to create those positive, safe, caring virtual classrooms, particularly during this unprecedented time. So I'm going to pause here, Dr. Goggins, to see if there's any questions or wonderings in our chat box.
We have some people making connections to things that they learned through looking at Ruby Pain, which would also, I can imagine this would be a part of that. There's some connections to the resembles the zones of regulation. I guess that was the mood meter, but also OT research base. We're here to assist educators in how they remain emotional state. Yes, so very important that the teachers are aware and mindful of their own state, right? So we often talk about trauma in this chronic stress in terms of the students, but it is a thing for all of us humans that we have to deal with. And so how do we regulate and how do we monitor, how do we gauge ourselves is going to be extremely, extremely important. And then it allows us to do the same for, or help facilitate the same for our students.
And thank you, Maureen. You just summed up exactly what I spent too long saying. So yes, if someone is stuck in the amygdala, their prefrontal cortex will not be engaged. Thank you. And then, but that's why we have these SEL strategies to mitigate that.
Sure.
Okay. All right. So now this is another tool.
Okay, I'm sorry. Somebody just put Dr. Nadine Burke-Harris. She has a phenomenal TED Talk on adverse childhood experiences. It's well worth the watch. Very concise and but excellent piece there. So, but anyway, as an educator tool for stress thermometry.
Okay, so this is a tool that you can use as an adult. I actually just used it this morning when my son was driving me crazy. So it's a tool you can use, but also it's another tool you can use with your students throughout your virtual day. You can start your day do a checkup in the middle of the day using this, or do it as a checkout. And so this is a way to identify how our bodies react when we are under stress. And so identifying the body signals can help us really identify that when we're feeling stressed, and it can give us the opportunity to figure out what we need to do to mitigate that stress. So we're gonna take a few moments to self-reflect on how our own bodies react to stress. And so think about when you are at a low level, medium level, and high level of stress, and how your body reacts. What happens to your heart rate, your breathing, your muscles, your stomach, your hands, your hunger level, your energy level, any other thoughts or feelings you have. So you can add those in the chat box as they come to you. Very quickly, I'll give you an example so you understand what I mean by low, medium, high. When I'm feeling low levels of stress, this is when, you know, just our everyday stress of having to balance work and home, right? We do that almost every day. It brings a low level of stress. So I sweat more. So pretty much I sweat all the time. Medium level of stress. This is when I'm preparing to facilitate 500 people in a professional learning session. Medium level of stress. That's when I actually get a lot of back pain. High levels of stress, which I think a lot of us have experienced over the past few months. I cannot concentrate on one task longer than 10 minutes. My brain is everywhere. I don't feel like eating, even though I seem to have gained the COVID-15. So just please add in the chat box, what happens to your body when you're feeling different levels of stress?
Headache, tense, shutdown, agitation, tummy aches. Okay.
Lots of fatigue or too much sleeping, agitation.
Shoulder pain. I know for myself, I tend to carry my stress in my hands. So I tend to clench my hands and in my neck and shoulders, for sure.
So now as you continue adding into the chat box, thank you. Think about what happens to you when you feel that amount of stress over time on a regular basis. And this is what we mean by toxic stress. So I know that people have said over the past few months, there's actually been an increase in mental illnesses, even though people have never had depression in their lives. So that's one, you know, example of how our body can exhibit toxic stress. Wears our body down, disassociation, weight gain, weight loss, a lack of motivation. Yes, can't think clearly, always on high alert. So now think about, when do you see these physical stress responses in your students? How would their responses be compounded by the pandemic and the protests in our country? So please put your thoughts in the chat box. When do you see these physical manifestations of stress in your students? And how do you think they'd be compounded by the pandemic and protests in our country? A lack of interest in the lesson, tantrums, shutting down, unable to focus.
Withdrawal, yeah.
Especially during testing online, yes.
Right, somebody says causing a distraction. So just trying to pivot away from the thing that's making them feel uncomfortable by actually maybe creating something even more, you know, more. Wow.
Extroverted kids are now feeling anxious and withdrawn. I see some of this in my own son. Those of you who have Sons and daughters may be seeing this in your own children over the past few months. Shutting down, not being able to focus, reacting out of proportion to a situation. Yes. I can't do this. Yes.
And also, I hope everybody is seeing just the wide variety of different things, right? So everybody responds a little bit different. Some people melt down, some people disengage, other people get frustrated and engage or come defensive, you know, those kinds of things. So we all tend to respond differently, as same way with our scholars as well. So I know we'll talk about it, but for sure that the idea of being patient, exercising patience, not taking it personal, and putting some processes in place that would hopefully help create that safety, which is the remedy to stress.
So again, this is a tool, you know, try it out with your students, because it's a lot easier for us as adults to identify when we're stressed. It's much more challenging for kids to know how to identify when they are actually stressed. Okay. All right, so moving on. So CASEL identifies 2 key critical practices for teachers in the virtual space. So one is building virtual relationships and connections with both families and students. And 2, creating safe, supportive virtual learning environments. So we're going to talk about those 2 buckets and give you many resources that you can use right away. You don't have to create. You can use right away with your students in the fall. So I'm going to share in the chat box, and Dr. Goggins will put it up, is a self-assessment checklist from CASEL. So once I put it in the chat box, please take a moment to look at this 1-page document. Okay. So please look at this document, understanding that it is impossible for an educator to implement all of these strategies all of the time. So please try not to be overwhelmed by this document and think that if you're not doing everything, you're not doing a great job with your students. That's not true. But take a look at it and identify 2 strategies, just 2 strategies from this list that you want to commit to really focusing on with your students come September. And if you'd like to share it with everyone in the chat box, please do so. Which strategies you really want to focus on come September.
This is available, the links to these will be available off of the Humanware website, and there'll be a link that will tell you how to specifically get. We have a curated list, so we update it regularly, of various resources, SEL, remote learning resources, and that will be on that list as well. So for the person who's asking about putting it in the toolbox, I'm not altogether sure what toolbox that would be, but off the Humanware website, you will have links to these resources.
So I see engaging one-to-one with students, ensuring lessons address the diverse cultures in my classroom.
Open-ended questions, yes. Seeing engaging families, of course, and that's an extremely important part. The uncertainties that we are feeling, the uncertainties that our scholars are feeling, are also the same uncertainties that our families and the parents of those scholars are feeling as well. So ways that we can connect and provide information and feedback to the families is extremely important, and also listening to that feedback from the families, for sure.
So a good idea, maybe put your 1 or 2 strategies in your lesson plan book, in your calendar, so that you can refer to it on a regular basis to remind you, I'm focusing on this. I'm focusing on this strategy. So before we share even more strategies, we want to hear from all of you about what are some SEL strategies that you have implemented in the brick and mortar setting that you think could apply to the virtual space. And if you could add those strategies to the chat box, Dr. Goggins and I are going to collect all of your wonderful ideas and share those with you as part of the resources. So again, sharing some brick and mortar SEL strategies that you have used that you are going to continue to use in the virtual space.
Morning meetings,
Feeling checks.
Paths. There's a lot of great resources through Paths, Second Step, Facing History. Daily goal settings.
Restorative circles, I love it.
Yoga, all right.
Chats, just quick one-on-one chats, great. Creating a safe place. Taking a 5-minute breathing, doing a 5-minute breathing exercise after lunch.
For sure. Those brain breaks, particularly, I know for me, sitting in front of a monitor, I'm good for about an hour. But I need to do a brain break afterwards. So, or to keep it moving. But all those kinds of things. These are some excellent ideas. The chimes, yes. SEL stories and role play, okay. Mindful music moments.
Presenting students with mock scenarios to problem solve. It's great.
Yes. Okay.
Okay. Okay, please keep adding those as they come to you. And again, we're going to collect those and share those with everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're going to look at really specific strategies that you can use to stay connected to individual students and families and to your classroom community as a whole. So again, I'm going to share a document with you, and I'd like everyone to take a few moments to review. It's just a 2-page document that identifies some specific strategies you can use. And identify 1 or 2 strategies that you think are pretty cool and that you'd like to try in your classroom, and just put those in the chat box. Okay. Okay, so I have shared, it is a Google Doc. And again, just read front and back and identify 1 or 2 strategies that you'd like to try to implement. Yes, 2-way journaling seems to be a popular one in our sessions.
Mhm.
Oh, someone shared a meditation YouTube channel. That's great. Thank you. We'll again share that in all the resources. Notes of appreciation.
Mhm.
Again, two-way journaling.
Positive notes to the students, for sure. Because that is, of course, very key, as you already know. That it is important that the first communications that you have with a student and a family isn't the negative one, right? And we all like to hear um, our name being called for something good versus the only time I get attention is because something is wrong, for sure. Yes. Sending letters, huh? Right. Excellent, excellent, excellent.
Okay, so please keep them coming, putting out what you really want to focus on. Dr. Goggins, let's move to slide 12.
Okay.
Okay, so as you see in that document, it lists some strategies for staying connected as a whole class, and one of them is daily check-ins. And we're going to share with you yet another resource that actually provides you check-in prompts that align to our five competencies. And again, I know we're throwing a ton at you and we're just giving you a few moments to look at it, but you'll have more time to debrief with all of these documents. So just take a moment to look at some of these prompts and really identify a couple prompts that really resonate you and think about why it would be a powerful prompt to use with your students. And I will share it in the chat box as well here so you can have access to it on your screen. So again, identify a couple prompts that really resonate with you and why they would be powerful prompts to pose to your virtual classroom students. Yes, I see a lot of teachers like the self-awareness prompts.
Mm-hmm. Go back up to the top. Okay. Okay.
Okay. So now there were just a few strategies there for really building a community in your classroom and staying connected with family and students. So now we're going to jump into how to create this safe and supportive virtual learning space. And I just, while we were preparing for this presentation, Patricia Tillo, one of the Humanware partners, said this, and I just wanted to highlight it. I really liked it. It doesn't always need to feel distant when a scholar feels safe. Okay, so how do we create the safe and supportive environment online? So we have, again, it's a tool for you to use. It is a script that you could use to have one-on-one virtual meet and greets with your students and families. And again, you don't need to do any preparing. It is an entire script for you to use. If you cannot schedule one-on-one meetings, many of us see too many students to do that. Just identify your tier 3 students who you know are it's gonna be a challenge for the family and the student to engage virtually, or you know that they're really struggling with some things at home that you'll know you have to reach out individually to them. And so it may be just a couple of students in your classroom. And so setting up that virtual meet and greet could be a really great way to bring them into the learning environment. And again, we have the script all set for you so that you can use that. Surveys, sending student and family surveys. And we understand that families may be receiving surveys from the district and from your school, but these are really individualized surveys to see how you as the teacher can support and engage the students and the families in the classroom. And so again, we have 2 sample surveys if you would like to send to your students. If you're in middle school, you could have your team send it to your family so that one family is not receiving multiple surveys. And the surveys we have for you, they're provided in English and Spanish. And if you need additional translation, just email us and we can provide that for you. I'm going to skip number 3 for a bit because we're going to come back to that. Shared agreements. So many of you already do this in your brick and mortar classroom. You start the year by creating shared agreements with your students. And shared agreements are a living document, which means they can shift and change throughout the quarter. And Dr. Goggins, we can go to the next slide. So here are some sample teacher prompts you could use to engage with your students to create these agreements. So 1, what helps you learn while learning remotely? What stops you from learning? What are some things that we can agree on and as a classroom community related to how we will all behave and treat each other online? And then how should we respond if someone fails to meet these agreements? And so here we have some sample agreements. And again, you'll create these with your students. So they may not look like this, but here are just some samples. I know that my own son was distracted in his virtual learning by some of the other kids who were lying in bed in their pajamas. So maybe a sample agreement is around everyone's gonna come to virtual learning classroom in their clothes and sitting upright. Or maybe lighting is very important. And so everyone's going to agree that they're going to be in a well-lit place. Maybe children are distracted when multiple people are talking at a time. So everyone's going to agree that one person speaks at a time and everyone else mutes their microphones. Okay. So again, here's some sample prompts that you can use to create those agreements. And right, this is a living document. So you're going to refer to it every day with your students, especially in the beginning. You're going to practice the agreements with them and model.
All right, so just to reiterate, this presentation will be provided to the Professional Development Office. So everything that you see here, you will be available to you. All the various resources that we've gone off to, those links are available off of the Humanware website, either directly off the website, or we have a curated list of SEL remote resources, and they're listed there as well. So you will get these resources to you. And if you're having trouble finding them, feel free to contact Humanware, your Humanware partner. If you're in K to 8, that would be either Joe Garrix or Patricia Tillo. If you're in high school, that would be myself, Lathardas Goggins II. But we'll have links, and we'll show you how to get those links towards the end of the presentation. But yes, you will, everything that you see will be available.
So Dr. Goggins, can you just go to back to slide 14 for a moment?
Sure.
Okay. So the third bullet, creating a protocol for how you will respond to individual students when they're not engaged and or when they're exhibiting disruptive behavior. So just like in your brick and mortar classroom, you set expectations and you model these expectations and these procedures with your students, and you practice them over and over again at the beginning of the school year. And it's the same strategies we want to apply to our virtual classroom. Really just keeping in mind that this virtual learning is completely new for us, of course, and our students. So in-person learning, our kids go to the next grade level knowing that they're going to learn your procedure or your expectation for passing out pencils, for turning in work, for using the bathroom, what the procedure is for checking out books in your classroom library. So we have to create those same procedures for the virtual space. And with that, we really need to, it's important for your sanity to create the protocols you're going to use to how you will respond when kids are not engaged virtually and or they're exhibiting disruptive behavior. And so we are going to share a resource, yet another resource with you. And this is a sample kind of script that you can use when your students are not engaged or they're not adhering to your agreements virtually. So the responding to behavior remotely document.
Okay. You put that in the...
I will right now. Okay, so I did post this in the chat, and you will not be able to access it yet because it is in SharePoint, and for some reason you can't open SharePoint in Zoom. But this will be a resource, but I did just want to highlight it for you. It goes through step by step what you can do when someone is not adhering to your agreements. You know, starting off with, let's say, this is a great example. Thank you. They're drawing on your presentation. So if someone were to draw on the presentation, what are you going to do first? And then what are you going to do if the behavior persists? And so this is a great document for you to use for that. I wish we had more time to just go straight through it. But again, take a look at it. And if you have any questions about how to use it, please contact us.
Sure. Okay, so we're going to ask you, to think about your partnerships. What are some supports that you have available to you at your school, people that you are connected to that can support helping you create safe learning environments for your students. You put that in the chat, and then we'll discuss more. Awesome coworkers, yes. Alice Cross, for definitely. The PCIA, yes. Principal Deans of Engagement, co-workers, yes. Parents, for sure. Awesome co-workers, right? So, yeah, y'all got this. So one of the major things is that even if we are working remotely, you are not alone, right? So we should make sure that we're not working in silos. Connect with your co-workers. Connect with the resources that you have available. Miss Hester, yes, at Wilson, I know she is a phenomenal resource. Your mental health partners, somebody said Applewood. Yeah, so make sure, please, 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 reach out to your co-workers, your partners, so behavioral specialists, Humanware. You have a variety of different partners, multicultural. Somebody was asking earlier about getting not transcriptions. I'm sorry, translations. Speech therapists, specialists. You have your school psychologists, right? So all the folks that you have, PCIAs, deans of engagement. You also have your SEL coordinator. That will be a resource, and somebody can help you connect to additional resources. They will have connections to WAVE and peer mediation resources. So all these things, excellent, excellent, excellent. And of course, you hear me say that time and time again. Many of these, if you need to know who some of these resources are, check with your Humanware partner. And a lot of these resources are available through the Humanware website as well. Excellent, excellent, yes. But then in your grade, of course, your team level, grade level teams, your administration for sure. But the main thing is you're not in a silo. Please, please, please reach out and work as a team. Yes, for sure. Excellent, excellent, excellent. So the road less traveled, which road would you take? It is, we are tempted, right? Because the urgency of now, right? The urgency of now is to just get right into the academics, the core subjects. Time is of the essence, and let's just dive right into it. And what we know is that if you invest some time at the beginning, doing the icebreakers, doing the brain breaks, and doing some breathing exercises, taking the time to promote mindfulness and becoming aware of how your body is responding, or making those connections between your mood and your behavior. Taking the time to communicate with your scholars how much you believe in them and trust them, and setting those agreements, and how we not only just teach but model the behavior that we expect, and taking the time to make sure that we recognize the good behavior, taking time to recognize the good effort. That when we take that time to do that, we save our time. We more than save our time moving forward, and you'll spend less time with problems and more time with engagement and meaningful experiences and meaningful academic progress. So we talked about this, some of the things that you can do. How will you address their needs? We got plenty of resources there. We're going to skip through this. Some of the things that we want you to make sure that you are clear and aware of is the Humanware initiatives that will transfer to remote. So PAVS has resources that they're being made available. so all our K through 8s, our elementary schools, PAVS has resources that they're making available for remote, that we're also going to, Second Step has resources that's being made available. They have a lot of great resources. And Facing History has phenomenal resources, crazy amount of resources that Facing History, there is almost seemingly every other day they're coming out with another list of resources and things that they're putting out, which is our focus in the high school, but a lot of the resources that they're putting out can be used across many grade levels. Class meetings, another great resource and something that we can do that translates very well into a remote environment. If you have any real questions or about how to best utilize some of these, again, contact your Humanware partner. Some, again, resources, again, Facing History, also available on the website. And so here's how you get to a lot of this information. If you go to clevelandmetropolitanschools.org and then go to the SEL remote tag, towards the top, it will give you a list of resources that will be available to you, and then there'll be a tag for the curated list of resources. Okay. Did somebody put our website in the chat there? I think somebody did. But yes, clevelandmetropolitanschools.org/humanware.
Okay, so everyone, thank you so much for your participation. We hope this was helpful and you were able to get some tangible resources and strategies that you can really implement right away in your classroom. Again, as Dr. Goggins said, don't hesitate to reach out. I left my email address in the chat. I'm not a Humanware partner, but I am happy to help and support in any way. So again, thank you. Have a wonderful rest of your week with the professional learning, and best of luck, and give yourself lots of grace.
Here's a course number for those of you who need it. Thank you. Thank you.
And we'll just stay on a few minutes if anyone has any lingering questions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll make sure we save the chat. Save chat. Okay. Yes, the PAVS resources will be off the website, and I know that we are looking for some more PAVS resources to put onto the curated list, but we'll get more information on that. The curated